Everyone, welcome back to Leadership Lessons with Cheri. I am excited once again to be back here with you for another week. It's been a fantastic week. I have to say, spring break 2025, which I hadn't had spring break for a year, um, did not disappoint. I can definitely say that. I'm back in, a school role and having some time off was great. I was able to sleep in, although I had a lot on my mind because I made some pretty big decisions about my business this week. It's all learning, right? It's always a learning curve and growing and becoming a better version of me each day, each week, each month, each year. I'm always striving for excellence. And this week, I decided after doing a lot of research, as you've heard me say, I'm building a program to submit to the Texas Education Agency by September 1st. That's my deadline for myself. That would then allow them to review and hopefully approve me, send me on to the State Board of Educator certification, and I can then be an educator preparation program for the state of Texas and have my own alternative education program or alternative certification program for teachers. I'm super excited about this, but as I started looking at some of the requirements and some of the work involved in this, I started to realize that a lot of times, especially now, since COVID in particular, I noticed that there's a lot of personal branding and influencer type businesses. And then there are businesses that really can grow into possibly a corporation. And as I look to the trajectory of what I want this certification program to become and what the possibilities could be, I started to realize that maybe it's not about me. Sure, I have to be the leader, the owner, the I'm the one with the goal and the dream, right? But this is a business that's going to actually really produce. Not that I wasn't producing before, but I don't know. I'm just looking at it in a different way. And in doing that, I started to think, okay, well, I can still be a creator and I can still be an author and I can still do all of the things, but maybe my actual business becomes a little more streamlined. It also came as I was thinking about the work that I did in public education and how much I miss that work. Stepping away definitely was needed for the time that I did it. And now going back, I'm just more hungry to be able to continue to have that kind of impact. And so feeling that out and trying to figure out where all of this fits into the world, it's caused me to do some big shifting. I have to say, it's caused me some sleepless nights this week because I wake up thinking, maybe I should be writing this down and maybe I should be working on this. I'm not a great sleeper anyway, but it also has caused me to do a lot of work this week. So I guess it was nice because I could do the work on a patio, having a margarita, or doing the work in my backyard while I'm soaking up some sun, some vitamin D, right? So nonetheless, changes are coming. I'm working on the plan later this evening and through this week of how I will implement and roll out these changes. And I'll definitely keep all of you posted. I'm going to keep doing this weekly leadership podcast because I do truly believe being a principal or a school leader is no different than being a leader in any kind of other organization. We just work with a different type of customer, right? And we're building something a little different, but the essence of leadership is still there. So you can always continue to get those great nuggets right here for free on the podcast. So having said that, I also have been doing and digging into some things and hearing a lot this week about people talking about hope or lack of hope. You know, we've gone into a new year, and I've shared this before, right? We go into new calendar years with this hope, this sense of this year is going to be my best year. Some people set resolutions, some people set goals. Some people, like me, look at one words or kind of do all of them together. And we've also spoke on here this year in 2025 about how it's that third week of January where people start to slip. Now, I've done all the work. I've read the Atomic Habits. I've done all of the things, but I truly do believe this. Something has to become routine for at least 5 weeks, in my opinion, to become a habit. When I first became or got back into running, I remember telling my ex-husband, I'm going to start with 3 days a week, then move to 4, and then move to 5. And he's like, okay, just don't overdo it. And when I got to that 5 days a week, it was about 4 weeks in, and he's like, are you getting tired of this? Don't you get bored with this? And I said, no, this is starting to become my normal routine. And once I hit that 5th week, it was just like, this is what I do. And for years, that was in 2006, so almost 20 years now, that has been, this is what I do. So knowing that, I also know that this has been what some people thought was going to be, oh, this is such a great year. And I'm hearing people start to doubt, I guess is the word I would want to say. Start to worry, start to become overwhelmed and stressed. People thought the economy was going to change right away, and it hasn't yet. People thought that housing market was going to change drastically. And although there have been some changes, it's not as drastic as what the people I talked to think. And it starts to affect our level of hope, our level of optimism. And I felt like this was a great topic this week, coming off of our series of becoming the best leader you can possibly be, and how it's more than just having the skill set. It's having the desire, knowing your why and keeping that as your forefront. Showing up as your most successful self day in and day out. Knowing we're still human. Yes, we have to give ourselves some grace, but it doesn't mean we show up in our yoga pants every day as I'm sitting here on a Sunday in a sweatshirt, right? But you get my point. We had a conversation about how important it is that we're organized and we run our day. And not just that, but manage our lives, manage our people, manage the things that have to get done. And then finally, giving ourselves some self-care time. But what happens when you do all of those things and you have the skills and you are striving for excellence, but you start to realize that the people you lead don't have hope, and it's starting to affect your organization? In the month of March, I'm talking a lot in my membership about transformational leadership. If you have not heard me say this before, I became known as the principal to come in and fix schools. And as a matter of fact, when I came upon my very last school, I was actually recommended by my first superintendent who hired me as a principal. And I quote, the person who hired me for that school said, if such and such tells me that you're the girl that can come in and fix this school, I knew I needed to do whatever it took to get you on board. So I developed that reputation of being a transformational leader, going through change management with people. And in the membership, I go through during the first week and talk about, the skill set that you have to have for sure. And I talk a bit about my experiences. And then as we go into the following weeks, of course, we'll have a group coaching, and then we talk about a book that aligns. But this feeling of hope is something that I remember going into my very first school, and there was not a lot of. Going back to that time, and this is when I first kind of stumbled upon this, I had been hired as the assistant principal of the school. after the district director had actually talked to me about becoming the principal at the school. However, I was in my early 30s, and demographically, I didn't fit the profile that the school board wanted. And I had not been a principal before. I had not had experience, right? So they wanted somebody to come into this school that was struggling, that was failing, that looked a little more like the clientele, like the customers, like the students and the families, who had some experience in a leadership role. And I had been an assistant principal, but for only 1 year, and that had a reputation already of being able to come in and be a fixer. So after she had talked to me about that role, she had come back to me and shared that. And she said, this is what we want to do, but we're offering you the assistant principal position. And of course, yeah, I was disappointed, but I was loyal and I knew that there would be steps forward and steps backward on this journey to become a principal. And so I accepted the position. And it was my hardest year I've ever had in my career. And the way it worked out is that about 6 months later, a little bit more, the principal was actually physically removed from the campus. And we did get an interim principal in. However, I was told, fix this, get us through the rest of the year, and then we will talk about your future. So I knew I was being looked at, and I knew that this was a possibility. I had no idea what I was doing, but I did know this. There was so much animosity for everything. The staff felt like the district did this to them on purpose. This former principal had actually designed a system that put one group of people, the previous employees that remained, against the new employees he brought in. So there was a lot of just ill feelings and mess and gossip and honestly, hateful activities going on within the building. We knew that student discipline was completely out of control. We knew that staff was not happy on either side, whether they were longtime employees or brand new employees. Nobody was happy. We knew that families weren't happy. They could feel this tension. And honestly, the interim principal, who was a well-established former principal, myself and my other assistant principal, we came together and we said, we survive for the next 3 months, period. That's all we need to do is survive. Start building relationships differently. Start talking to people differently. Start looking at what we can do in the future, but right now we survive. And that last day of school, I was actually named a couple days before. I still had a lot of people with a lot of doubt, but more so, the people who stayed with me, who decided to give me a chance, not much hope that things would get better. So for the month of June, staff was gone. I was able to just focus on, okay, let's really digest what has actually happened here, what the history of the school looked like, where I was going to encounter roadblocks. And I scheduled a meeting with my superintendent and the chief of staff and my director. Now, my director was my former principal as a teacher. So I was close with all of these people. They believed in me. They knew that I had the best interest of the district and the campus. I schedule a meeting with them and I sit down and I said, okay, this may not be what you're expecting to hear, but let me show you what I have found in my research. So I bring up all my data, the trends, the history. The superintendent was in his second year. The chief of staff also in his second year. And my director in her second year, however, she had been a longtime employee of that district. And I said, and this is how we need to move forward this 1 year. I'm asking you for permission to allow me to do one thing, and that is to rebuild hope and trust. And it was like crickets. And I thought, oh, I'm going to lose my job now. But after looking at what my proposal was, after looking at the trends in the history and the data, they all looked at me and they said, all right, you've got 1 year. And I remember thinking, whoa, this is a lot, but I knew it was the right thing to do. You see, my plan was to reestablish this hope and trust, but also do it in a way where these employees could do what they thought they knew what was right, what they had been told for a year that they were horrible people for trying and doing, because it then could rebuild their confidence. But ultimately, I knew what they were doing wasn't working because of the trends in the history and the data. But I designed it in a way where they built that trust with me. We reestablished hope. They became more confident, but they also became self-aware enough to see what they were doing wasn't working, and that I could come in and help them. Because when I came on board with an assistant principal who had not been at that campus before and was actually demoted from the principal position down to assistant, and this principal who they removed. So in their eyes, they saw me as one of them. Sure, I had done some work to rebuild these relationships in the 3 months that we had left of school, 4 months left of school, but not enough yet. And so I had to be very intentional and very methodical, and I had to be ahead of the game, and I had to be very observant, and I had to be an active listener, and I had to be somebody who was going to empathize with them. However, still hold them accountable. We put this plan into place, and I have never worked harder in my entire life. That was my hardest year of actually putting in the work, because I was also training 2 new assistant principals, hiring new staff, bringing them on board, navigating the waters of accountability systems, building relationships with the community, all of the things. And we saw a tiny glimmer of hope by the end of the year. But my plan worked exactly the way I thought it was going to work. And I saw a huge increase in the trust factor. And so year 2, I could walk in and say, all right, y'all, we did it this way. And we saw some improvement, but not enough. And could we all agree that unless we see some major shifts, that small improvement will never sustain itself? And we'll be right back where we were before, feeling doom and gloom, overwhelm and stress. And eventually realizing that none of us will have a job, because we can't have schools that do not put children first, that do not provide effective instruction, that do not allow a safe space for people within the building. And I got them. I got them just like that. And if there would have been some kind of input-output machine that I had at that moment that could have spit out data to me at the end of that next year, the hope factor had changed. It had increased to a level that you would not even believe, to a point where, and I remember saying this to a group of other principals, especially newer ones, younger than me. It was a pivotal moment because at that minute, I had them in a place where they would walk through fire for me as their leader. And I would do the same for them. Because we had gone from this feeling of distrust, hopelessness, unworthiness to a feeling of there is something better out there. Optimism and a renewed sense of fuel almost, or energy, because we all knew it was going to be hard now to be able to get where we needed to go faster, but we were in it together. And we were a team, a solid, full-blown team at that point. So I ask you, have you measured the hope factor within your organization? Have you had conversations? Do you have a pulse on how your teams feel, how your clients feel? It's hard out there right now. And if you're having conversations that are personal things are coming in and affecting your organization, or your organization is stuck in a place where we're not moving forward and people don't know how and don't see a way to do it, this is where you as a leader need to make some shifts. Now, when I did my turnarounds, I always focused on 3 big areas until I had to do work from a setback where I was the leader. So I always came in as the new leader. So I didn't have to focus so much on my leadership skills per se. Of course, every one of my experiences was a little bit different and I had a growing curve, but it wasn't that I had caused the problem. But there were times, especially at this last school, where I may have contributed to the problem. I wasn't alone, but I needed to work on those skills. But I always focused on systems, processes, and procedures, climate and culture, and skill set. And as I went through all of this on each of these campuses, those were the things that I had to check. And I had to realize, were the systems, processes, and procedures, climate and culture, and skill sets of the people effective? Were they moving the needle? And if we had to make adjustments, what were the quickest levers that I could think about and change that would, one, cause the least amount of stress? Now, we all know change is stressful, change is hard. So there's never going to be no stress or feelings of, no, this is not right. We've always done it this other way, right? Change is hard. But you find the ones that are the biggest change makers, that are going to cause the least amount of stress, that will see results the fastest. Now, it'd be great if we had a crystal ball and we could just kind of rub it and see what the future is going to bring, right? We don't. But when you can look at your data well enough to know, this is exactly where this broke down. This is exactly how I need to fix it. And if we all get on board together, or at least the majority, this is how fast we can see results, because success breeds success. And once people start to feel positive effects from any changes, they'll be motivated to continue to make the changes. They'll be hungry to be even more successful. And you'll start moving forward. So I'm going to challenge you, if you're feeling like hope is a problem right now within your organization, sit down and really do a deep dive analysis. See what's happening with your systems, processes, procedures. See what's happening with your climate and culture. See what's happening with skill set. Remove the things that you can't control because that's what we always want to stay focused on, right? I remember every single time going in to do this, I know teachers would say, well, parents don't discipline their children at home. And that's all they wanted to stay on. And finally I said, okay, so how are we going to change that? And they're like, we're not. And I said, so that means we just lie down and die at this point because we can't change that. So we're never going to improve because I don't believe that. And I don't think you do either. And there are schools out there in worse places than we are that have done it. And that would bring them right on board. Removing those uncontrollable factors. And then, y'all, I want you to also think about your hope factor as the leader. Where are you right now? Do you feel the doom and gloom? Because if so, this is a time where that fourth piece comes in, and that is asking yourself, are you the right leader for the position? Do you need to work on a skill set? Do you need to work on your soft skills, your motivation? Do you have your why? Do you need to get a mentor, a coach, somebody that can get you back on track? Or is it time for a change? You hear about companies where the leader has been in place for years and years. In my last school, I was the principal for 8 years, and I should have left after 6. I know that now, looking back. 7 and 8 were not horrible. We had great results, but I wasn't at my best. So even though we had great results, those great results were because I had started putting things in place that were becoming more automatic. And I had people in place that could do the work. And my teams, I trusted and they trusted me and they wanted to work for me and they wanted to be successful. That's why I stayed on, because now it was running like a well-oiled machine. But my feelings about the position, my feelings about where I was, they weren't aligned with it. And I'm not one that says necessarily fake it till you make it. I do think you have to show up and act as if, but I was faking it and I wasn't making it. And what ended up causing me to do is leave the profession entirely to a place where this was something that I had always loved since I was 6 years old. Always wanted to do and loved every minute of my days, even the hard days. So as leaders, let's take a pulse check. It's March 16 as I'm recording, middle of March. Where are we as an organization, but where are you as a leader? And what kind of adjustment do you need to make within yourself and within your organization? And let's take that first step and do it. Let's not just talk about it. Let's not just stay dwelling on the uncontrollable factors. Let's react. Let's go. We don't have time to waste, because I do believe 2025 is going to be so much better for so many people, but not if we don't do things different. If you need my help, this is one of the things that I do. I support leaders with this. I want to see you be successful. Specifically, if you're a school leader, I've done this. So this is old hat to me, but any other organization, as I said, this kind of piece here is universal. So reach out if you do need some help. I am here. I have limited spots open right now, but let's talk about what it is you would need from me, because you may need a whole package. You may just need a couple of sessions, and you may just need to have a one-on-one conversation. So let's just talk about that if you are in a place that you need this. If you know a leader out there that you think, well, I might not need this right now, but my friend really does, send this to them, because my goal, my job now is to have this impact on leaders. And until we get this right, we always have room for improvement. And even when we get it right, we can always improve. So I hope you have an amazing next week. Some of you, if you're a school leader, you're on spring break. I'm finishing mine up and have to go back to work tomorrow, but it's all fine. Some of you are thinking about spring vacations, thinking about your kids being off or going back to school, whatever it is that you're focused on working on. Hopefully the weather's getting better. Get out there and get some vitamin D and some fresh air. And let's make 2025 our best year yet. I know it can happen. All right, have a great one, and I'll see y'all right back here on Leadership Lessons with Cheri.